This was on the old Spanish Trail, as it's called, and it was a throughway that carriages, coaches, and also the steamboat used to come right up behind and dock behind them, which is why it's called the Steamboat Inn today. Originally, I believe it was known as, it's had a few names. It was the Kennedy House or the Kennedy Inn and a few other names prior to that. But today they refer to it as the Steamboat Inn because the steamboat used to come right up behind. And that steamboat ran on Bayou Teche. So Bayou Teche goes all the way up from Lafayette, all the way down to the Atchafalaya River. And from there, so you could travel quite a distance on those old steamers. So this inn had a lot of people coming to stay, people of varying degrees of wealth and not wealth. A lot of people who would have worked in the cotton fields, in the indigo fields, and they were moving around between different towns and things. So this inn had a sort of cheaper side and a slightly more expensive side. Now, what I was told is the side where room two was where the manager and his family resided, which is why we have this interesting little semicircular hallway. They could close a door off there and they had that whole side of the house to themselves, or the whole side of the building. And there was the room number two would have been the main bedroom. And then there were two other bedrooms which have been converted into bathrooms now. So those two other additional bedrooms up there are now bathrooms to service the suites. But interestingly enough, this room two, it's a large room and it would have originally had a fireplace. It has a fireplace in it today, but as they were saying, the fireplaces in the home now are rebuilt. So they're more modern looking. They've got that big brickwork with a mantle, and that would not have been the normal type of fireplace in
Okay.
that home, right? It would have been a much smaller, close to the wall.
Was there
And
anything that stood out to you personally about um as you were walking around and going to your room? Did anything sort of catch your attention or sort of make you sort of have, more heightened senses?
yeah, well, it's a good question too, right? Because yes, when we
Yeah.
were walking through the house at the time, I believe Charles was telling us that one of our other friends had come in and he sensed something at the top of the stairs. And it was quite true. When I got to the top of the stairs, there was this very oppressive feel to the space, but not in like a negative bad way. There was just this strange
Just
little
like a
quiet.
heavy energy, heavy air.
Yeah, it sort of
Yeah.
felt heavy,
Dark heaviness. Yeah.
but not something that I would say is sinister or bad. It was just it's almost like stagnant energy, if you know what I'm
Hmm.
talking about, Rachel. That energy that
Yeah.
just kind of sits and it doesn't
Oh,
seem
yes.
to move around. It just sort of sits in one spot.
Mm.
But that was sort of the feeling when we got up the stairs. But when I came into room two, it was a beautiful room. It's got windows, lots of windows in there, and beautiful furniture. It's got this gorgeous four-post bed. It's not a canopy, but it's a very traditional four-post bed, spindle style that it gets narrow towards the top. Very lovely, big bed, nice big queen size bed in there. And they're lovely rooms. They have all of the nice little sort of feel to make you feel like it's quite an elegant stay. And so I didn't think too much about it. Again, we put our stuff in the room, we left, we went out again. What was really interesting was when we got back that night, because like I said, the first night we were sharing the building. There was another couple downstairs staying. We talked with them briefly, and then we went off and did our things, and we came back. And it was pretty early that night, pretty early. I think if we were already in bed, it was like maybe 10 o'clock. And I was doing some reading, and Ed was, on his phone looking at some stuff. And we just decided, okay, we're going to go to bed. We were getting up really early the next morning, actually, to go out onto the Teche and that with the boat. And So we thought, oh, we'll go to bed early. So we went to bed. I think I fell asleep. It was like 10:30. It's very quiet there. And you could hear the birds, they have some night birds and that. So you could hear a few birds outside. And then at one point, I could hear this strange little sound, right? And so I said to him, I go, do you hear that? And he's like, it sounds like bats. And I'm like, it does sound like bats, doesn't it? So there's bats in the chimney, right?
Are
And
you saying there's vampires in Louisiana? Is that what you're implying here? See, because that there's.
well, they
Of
are pretty.
course there are.
Thought this was a ghost show. It's not the vampire show. That's next week.
Yeah, that's next week.
There's a
But
great book out written by an author who I believe he's deceased now, George R. R. Martin.
oh yes,
Yes,
He
yes.
wrote a novel
I
called
know him.
he wrote a novel called Fever Dream, and
Oh,
that's exactly what the book is. It's about a bunch of vampires that are on this old, Mississippi River paddle steamer going
Hey,
down the river.
wow!
It's a great book. It's awesome.
okay.
I,
I'm
I
gonna have
don't
to
know
check that out.
if it's still in publication anymore, but
Oh,
if
I'm
you can
sure.
get a copy, it's a great book.
I totally will. I will. That's fantastic. I didn't know that.
That's
You learn something
right,
new.
though, right? So here's these little bats, right? Where all the bats are flying around outside of the house, and we can hear them. And it ends up they're up in the chimney. They're going to be dealt with in a nice way.
How big are these bats? Are they just
Oh, they were
normal sized bats?
like little browns, like little brown bats, right? We didn't
Oh,
see them. We didn't see them at all. You could just kind of hear them, right? You can hear bats, right? They make a very sort of soft little sound, and we thought they were outside the window, and we discovered they were probably up in the upper part of the chimney. They weren't in the attic because I went up into the attic and there was nothing up in the attic. It was perfect. So I think they'd just gotten in and had found themselves a nice little roost inside the chimney because of the bricks being nice and rough they can grip on. So they were just getting in there. But anyway, so this was the first thing. So we wake up, I hear this sound. I'm like, okay, this is little bats. I can deal with that. So we fall back asleep again. And I remember to the exact minute, it was 12:39. I woke up, boom. And I looked at my phone, which was beside me, and it says 12:39. And it was crazy. It was so noisy. And I'm waking up at him like, hey, wake up. Can you hear this? And he's like, what? Because nothing says like wake me up in the middle of the night so I can ask if he can hear things. So anyways, what I could hear, which I wasn't sure, was I could hear in the distance the sound of field guns, like boom, boom, and then like a Gatling gun sound, that, and it was just like the weirdest sound. And I thought maybe there was a train or there was something in the distance. So when I woke him up, I'm like, can you hear this? Can you hear what I'm hearing? And he's like, I don't hear anything. And I'm like, are you sure?
yeah.
It's like cans
Yeah.
going off. And
Was it similar to what you heard in Gettysburg when you were in Gettysburg?
yeah, very much so. But
Yeah, because maybe it was part of the Civil War.
this
That's what
That's
I'm
what I was
that's what I'm
thinking.
thinking is that you were picking up on some kind of residual energy from the Civil War.
right. And
That's right.
apparently there was a battle just down the way, not very far away, like a couple of miles down the road.
Wow,
On
see?
top of that now, so we have this going on. This I can hear it, and it's not going away. It's not stopping. It wasn't like a one-off. You could just keep hearing. It was as if you were in the inn at the time, and the battle was going on several miles away down the road, and you would hear
Crazy.
and I could hear that. And then there was a woman's voice. I kept hearing this woman's voice, and she kept saying, Cassandra, 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 where are you? Over
Oh,
for 2 hours. And she was very adamant. It was a very, very, very strong voice, very strong personality. And it was just a constant Cassandra, Cassandra. And at times it was very loud. She was like, where are you? She was yelling through the entire house. And then
Wild.
also, there's all these voices I can hear. So say like 10, 15 people talking. And you know when you hear that, but you can't really hear what they're saying. It's just a murmur. It's like a lot of voices
Yeah.
talking, nothing's very clear. And I could hear that. And I wasn't sure if it was coming from, it sounded like it was coming from downstairs in the main entrance or outside on the front porch. But this literally went on for 2 hours. It did not stop. I could not sleep. It was loud. It was constant. Ed had fallen back to sleep. I'm like, wake up. It's driving me crazy. So about 2:30 or so, I finally literally said very loudly, stop it. Enough. Everything stopped. And it was quiet. All we could hear was the little bats and going, coming and going out of the chimney. And I fell asleep again. I've never experienced that. Like I've had a lot of different things happen, but this was consistent. Oh, what happened? I got all blurry. Look at that. Whoa, that was weird.
Yeah.
But I've never really had it for such a prolonged period of time. You know, sometimes you'll pick it up, you'll hear it, and it'll last for a moment or two. But this was 2 hours. And until I actually said, stop, I can't sleep, it just kept going and going. And it was like it was on repeat, like a consistent loop over and over and over. And I'm like, why am I the only one hearing this?
Yeah.
You know, it was like.
That's often the case, though, isn't it? You know?
But I don't know. Like, have you ever experienced anything, Rachel, that's gone on for like 2 hours or, you know, even an hour? Like,
No, not typically 2 hours. That's a very long time for me. That would drive me insane, I think.
it was driving me insane at that point.
I question if I had, schizophrenia at that point,
Well, it was
because I'm like, what is that? It's a very long time to be hearing things, that's a little on the concerning side, if you ask me.
Well, that strikes me as residual energy.
Well, that's what I thought too.
Yes.
Because with like a spirit interaction, it's more in the moment, where this was just on a loop.
And yes, exactly. It's not going to repeat. Yeah. That's what residual is. It just it loops over and over again.
Mm-hmm. And that was kind of my reckoning on this too, because I couldn't get any response when I was, trying to find out who this person was that kept going, Cassandra, Cassandra, because of what I was hearing between the distant sounds of a war happening, these guns going off, the people talking downstairs, it was just a quiet murmur. So it wasn't really, but this woman was loud, very loud, and very sort of, just demanding. And it's funny because the next day, one of the owners had popped by, and he, Charles, and he had asked, and I said, well, the room 2 is really, really noisy. I hope that, when we move downstairs to the main room today, that it's quiet. Now, funny enough, when we got downstairs into the main room, it was pretty quiet. Although, oddly enough, I heard footsteps upstairs. So when we went to bed the next night, I was asleep again, got woken up, and I'm not sure what time it was at that point. But I thought that Ed had gotten up to go to the bathroom, and I could hear footsteps, and I was listening, and then I realized he's still asleep beside me, but I could hear them walking across the floor upstairs in room 2, and then down the staff staircase.
Oh, that reminds me of the Victorian Hotel in England. It was the same kind of thing where you even hear the weight of the foot on it's not just like a noise of a footstep. It's like you hear the the weight. Does that make sense, Ian?
Yes.
Yeah.